Bay West Church meets at 100 Emerson Road in Palm Bay at 11 a.m. on Sundays. We're glad you decided to check us out. God has a specific message of hope for your life and mine today. So listen up.
I think that this series is probably one of the more important series that we've done here at Bay West for a lot of reasons. I feel this surge in culture of people that I talk to. You see it. You talk to people, you see people throughout the day, and you see it online, you see it on social media, all over the place. People struggling to believe about God. And it's not because our generation or our people are not spiritual. It's just that they're struggling with the Lord, and they don't automatically kick into Christianity to figure that out in this country anymore. And it's a sad thing, because God is still the God that He's always been. But the hard part about it is when I talk to people and I read what people believe about God, or what they say, or the problems that they think that they have with God, the more I listen to them describe it, I'm actually inclined to agree with them that God doesn't exist. Because I don't believe they're rejecting a true picture of who God is, but they're rejecting this false picture of God, this distorted view of God that we've allowed to have in our culture. And it's sad. It's sad because whether you reject a false God that doesn't exist and you spend your life rejecting that, or you just say, I don't believe in God at all, you end up in the same place. You've never met the true God of Scripture, and you are not prepared to deal with eternity, much less the life that we choose. Last week we talked about one particular distorted view of God, the on-demand God. Like, maybe there's something you have prayed and you thought it was, it was right, and you thought this was it, and you prayed and you prayed and you prayed, and it could have been something that was just kind of something you wanted, something you felt was your life purpose, something that was just so dear and close to you, and you prayed for it, and it didn't come true. And you feel like maybe God wasn't there, or God didn't get it, or God doesn't like, and here's the hard part. Sometimes people feel like it's God just has a problem with me, and He just won't answer my prayers, so I want to believe, but God doesn't do that. And we talked about the fallacy of on-demand God, because God is in charge, and everything's made for Him. The things that we can trust, not that we can come to God and demand that He do things and drag Him along on a string. In fact, I'll be honest with you, there's sometimes I want God to do some things that I really wish in hindsight that He would not do. Have you ever been there? You're really mad about something, you're upset about something, you're just like, I just want you to just do this, God, just do it, I'll tell you, all right, I'll tell you a secret. Okay, there's these magazine people, and they call and try to sell you, and there are times that I have prayed, I'm like, oh God, please, just stop that business, just burn that business down, get everybody out safe, and let them go find a job somewhere else, so they'll never call back again, or do anything like that, because I don't like what they do. And those are the prayers that I'm said, I'm so glad you didn't answer that. That's great. You knew better than me, but God knows better than all of us. And so that's the reason God is in charge. And what we can trust is that He's faithful, that He's loving, that He's slow to anger. He will never act out of character or overreact or act rashly or harshly with us. That He is a God who's abounding, overflowing in love that never stops, and He will never, ever leave. He is here for the long haul with us when we trust Him and follow Him. I hope you come. I hope you've invited people to this series. Next week we're dealing with something called Goosebumps God. It's the God that I have to feel to be real. And we're going to talk about that and how emotions play into things. And the next week is going to be a very tough one on May the 7th. That's going to be a hard Sunday, because we're going to be talking about the heartless God. God just must not care. Look at what He lets happen all around us. You read the headlines as good as I do. You feel the tragedies. A few weeks ago we had our prayer team. We're gathered with some people, and we're praying for the child that got hit on his bicycle in Palm Bay here just not too long ago and died. And all the people that were involved in that, because it just destroys it and just fractures so many lives there. And you wonder, why don't you just bring your hand down and stop that? You could have stopped that. If you're all powerful, why can't you do that? We're going to deal with the heartless God on May 7th. But today, we deal with something that's a little bit different. I don't know, this one's close to my heart because I kind of grew up with this kind of philosophy, even though I was in church. It's that God is the KillJoy God, Like God's entire purpose is to take all the things that He created that was fun and to tell me that they're bad and I don't need to do them. You ever felt that? I grew up in South Alabama in a Baptist church, and everybody in my church that was great. I love my folks, but I'll be honest with you. I grew up with almost this sense of dread in my heart that if I liked something and I tried to do it, that it was probably a bad thing, and I need to confess and feel sorry for it. You ever felt that way? We kind of have that, in our, if it tastes good, it's bad for you. We kind of have this kind of pessimistic thing going around. When I was a Southern Baptist, and I don't know if you know much about Southern Baptists. We're Southern Baptists, so, but Southern Baptists back in the day, they had this thing about dancing. You don't dance. Man, I can cut a rug. I'm not bad. I feel called to the dance, man. It goes in the bass and it's moving. And I told a friend of mine, I said that what you feel that is happening with your body, and when you video it and you look back at it, it ain't the same thing. I'll be honest with you. But I still feel it. I love to dance. I was a rebellious one. I'd sneak out and go to dances. My mom would let me go. It was cool. Nobody at my church really beat the drum about that because I think they like to dance too. And, that's kind of how it was. But, we have these things. It's just like it was fun. And so I feel bad about it. And some people believe that. I would love to believe in God, but you know what? There's just too many rules. There's just too many stinking rules. How can I keep up with all that stuff? How am I going to do that? Some people think that it just takes the fun out of life. This constricts my freedom. Outside the church, people see it as boring. Man, that is just boring. And I heard that going through the 90s, and there was this big push like in church stuff. We're not boring. We're going to prove that we're fun. I'm like, anytime you try to prove that you're fun, it's probably not going to work out really well. You're probably going to end up looking like a big goof, but we tried. So that's what happened in the 90s. But, you see this mentality that it's just boring. And here's what being a Christian really was. If you're nice and you dress modestly and you're quiet and you're meek and you smile all the time and you're not really loud, you don't drink, don't smoke, don't chew, and don't go with girls that do, you're a Christian. You must be a Christian, right? Because that's what this placid sort of mold that we have sometimes for a good Christian, and people would believe that. I had a friend of mine, when I started to follow Christ, he called me, and I'm not saying who it is because Mama knows him, and I don't want her to get him. But he called me one time, and he was like, I was following Christ, and he wanted to go party at the beach like we used to, and he was like, hey, dude, come on. You've been good. God will give you some time off. You've been doing great. Just take a vacation from it. Come on, I want the old Jim back. Now, and I was like, no. It just doesn't work that way, but that's what they thought. But see, here's the bad thing. It's also inside the church. There could be this kind of other side of that as well. And you see it, people who think, oh, no, I've got to keep all these rules for God to love me. I'm a Christian. I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't. Lord, help me. I can't let anybody know that I do that. They usually freak out when any kind of rule is violated. You're a rule person. I admit I find comfort in rules. I grew up a little bit like this. You said that. I can't believe it. And God taught me through my life. My job's not to be the morality police for everybody. That's y'all work that out with the Lord. And it's funny because now I see the culture. And somebody will walk up to me and we'll be talking, in or outside the church, or whatever, and they'll drop a cuss word and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, Pastor. I'm like, well, you didn't sin against me. It's not my problem. Don't freak out about that. It's not on me. That's whatever. You work that out with God. I don't, it's not my thing. But, it's just been a cultural thing that's been, just melded into our society sometimes. Is that's how we feel is this, got to be this rule keeper, got to be this morality, the morality police. And what's sad is what happens to the rule keepers in the church is they take a little marker and they mark out that part that says confess your sins one to another. They just go, with a Sharpie and mark that sucker out, because if something happens and they mess up, oh no, I've got to build a sandcastle around it so nobody can see it, and there's nothing to see here, and throw paint on it and all this type of stuff. And they live in this prison of guilt. Because I messed up and nobody needs to know. Because, oh my goodness, if someone found out that I did, oh my goodness, no one would ever trust me again. It's the worst thing that could happen in the world. And that's horrible. And see, that's sad. Because here's what I'm going to tell you, people just think, oh, it's just a bunch of rules. Well, I'm going to tell you something that might shock you. Jesus had that exact problem with the religion of his day. There's just too many rules. And what he talks about in Matthew chapter 23. In Matthew 23, he's just lambasting the Pharisees, right? And that's another thing. If you think that being a Christian is just being nice, you obviously have not read Matthew 23. And if you want to keep that perspective, don't go read it, because you're going to find out Jesus just let them have it up one side, down the other. I mean, just no holds barred. Boom! Here's what you are. Here's what you're doing. Here's what you need to change. And he said this in verse 4, talking about the Pharisees. Now, they're standing right next to him. And he's talking to some guys about, don't be like those guys. They're hypocrites because they crush people with unbearable religious demands and never lift a finger to ease the burden. Let me give you a little backstory on this particular verse. See, the Mosaic Law had 613 rules in it, 613 laws. You had the top 10, everybody knows that, 10 Commandments, right? And then 603 past that to make this set of rules that were huge. But see, if you know the history of Israel, you know they violated some of those laws, and they felt the consequence of violating these laws that God put in place to help them out. Because the laws covered everything from hygiene to relationships to governments to legality, all how you deal with criminals and crime and keep order in society, all those type of things. And they violated these laws, and they got into some severe punishment for it. They received a lot of consequences. And so there was these guys called the Pharisees, and they kind of rose up. And they said, okay, we're going to take care of this. We're going to make sure that we don't violate these laws again. And they started creating these things called fence laws or hedge laws. And what that is like, here's the law, here's the line. If you step across the line, you're going to get it. It's kind of how they did their deal. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a law back here. So if you get to right there, you don't cross that. So obviously, ergo, you don't cross the line, you don't get in trouble, but you haven't really crossed the line, so you're in good shape, right? So they just start creating all these laws. So what you've got to realize is, let me just tell you. All right, so you got the Sabbath law. You're not supposed to work on the Sabbath and keep it holy, set it apart, all that stuff. All right, they had 39 classifications for what the word work meant. All right. 39 areas, and in those 39 areas, there's all these subsets and rules and exceptions and loopholes, and if this did this, if you walked so many steps at this point you were working, or if you reached too high, just whatever, all these characteristics of what, and so there was thousands and thousands of rules. And they had that for all of the laws. I mean, they put together the book of all their extra laws to help you keep the law, and it was like over 800 pages long. I mean, my goodness, who can understand all that? Who can keep up with all that stuff? And what Jesus was saying is, don't listen to those guys. They're keeping these unbearable rules, and they're not helping you at all. And he continued. He continued on. He said, down later in the chapter, he said in verse 25, he says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence." You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside will be clean. See, here's the point. The Pharisees were only concerned with how they looked. And see, that's the problem with rules. If you're only a rule person, you only deal with how rules are, you can only deal with how you look on the outside and the performance of things. Because a lot of times rules don't deal with here. That doesn't change your heart. It's like going around and saying, have you seen these like man girdles and stuff like they sell on it? So they're only coming up in my feed. Okay. But you put these things on and and then you're supposed to walk around, and they got little rib padded things, that kind of make you look like you have abs and stuff, and you can walk around. You walk around in pain. People think it's because you're muscles. But that's not what's up. It's like that's what you do to get better looking. I'm going to tighten myself up, walk around in pain. Well, see, here's the point. Just don't eat all that food and work out, and then you'll be like that, and you won't have to walk around in pain. That's kind of the point. It's like what they were trying to do is just, how can I make myself look better on the outside? And it was terrible because they would be so pious and all these things and have these big robes and all this stuff and make slow motions. He even says that. So they do everything slow because it looks really grand and awesome, and Jesus kind of bombed on them for that. But the point is in their hearts, they were just trying to game the law. And they would do things like, the law said that you're supposed to take care of your family. Well, they will say, well, the money that I would have given your mom and dad who are in bad shape, I'm going to call that Corban or make that's really my offering to God. So now you're making me choose between you and the Lord. So I must give up this perfect right to help my family so that I can give this to the Lord. But they really kept it for themselves. See, they didn't have, their heart was not right. The inside was full of greed and self-indulgence. And that didn't help anybody. And so what you begin to see, the Pharisees they were concerned with the external, and their insides were a mess. What Jesus called them later? He called them whitewashed tombs. You're great on the outside, but you're full of death on the inside. So great. So Jesus, you're probably thinking, okay, hey, this is a really great sermon. Because what you're kind of letting up for is that Jesus is like all against rules, right? You shouldn't have any. You're setting me up for that, Jim. You say I can just throw it off and just run out, whatever, and do what I want. Well, I'm sorry, that's not necessarily the case. Because what Jesus said in John 14:15, he says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. Now, it's not like, if you love me, you'll do this. It's like, if you're loving me correctly, is what it really should read that as. If you're loving me correctly, you're keeping my commandments. Is what it looks like. He also said, in Matthew 5, that he didn't come to abolish the law, but he came to fulfill it. And he even said, if you ignore the least of the commandments in here, I'm not going to be happy with that. That's not a good thing. So how do you reconcile this whole point of, you got too many rules. What's wrong with these rules? And God and Jesus who said these rules are valuable. Well, see, here's the point. What happened is that the Pharisees, like a lot of people, they didn't understand the purpose of the rules and the law that God created. Now, Paul explains this to us, the Apostle Paul, when he writes in the book of Romans. And we're going to flip over to Romans chapter 3. If you've got your Bible, by the way, I didn't say this earlier, you can flip, that's fine, that's cool. If you've got your smart device, I'm not going to think you're playing the latest game or whatever, or on Facebook or something. It's all good. You can pull it out, do whatever you do, unroll your scroll. If you've got the little Bible app, little brown Bible app, you can click on that. There's a place in the sidebar that says events. And you can type in Bay West Church and pull it up, and you'll have all these scriptures right there. Boom, 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 and a place for you to take notes. Please follow along with that if you want to. But in Romans chapter 3, he talks about this. He starts with the law. He said, therefore, no one will be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law. So you know what that means is the law can't save you. There's a prevalent thing in our society that if we can be good enough and do enough good things, then we're going to be okay. That's not what's happening. A lot of people who think God is the KillJoy God, they see, okay, I've got too many rules to keep. There's no way in the world I could keep all that. And you're right. They're absolutely right. They're cotton picking right. You can't keep all that. So I can't keep up with these rules, so God must hate me, and I can't believe in him. I just don't want to deal with it. And that's what they end up doing. And see, the truth is, you might even verbally agree with what I just said, that the law can't save you. But are you living that way? Do you let yourself off the mat when you make a mistake? Or when you do something that you know is not godly or spirit-controlled? Or do you beat yourself to death about that for days on end, even after you've already confessed it to the Lord? And maybe for years, and it's been years, and you did that, and it still affects how you think, and you can beat yourself down in a heartbeat about that. Is that you? Well, then are you living like the law can save you or not? Because if the law can't save you, it's got a different reason. It's something else. Do you get upset with others who break the rules? Do you feel like you need to run around and be the police for everybody else? And stop that. Do you act like everybody's parent? I'm the hovering parent. I am that sometimes. I'm like, and I'm going to tell you where a lot of that comes from. It comes from, how does that look? Is that okay? Should I let them keep doing that? Should I let them try to chop each other's arm off even? How should I do? And it's a lot of confusion. And in my confusion, I make bad decisions sometimes. I'm like, stop, just stop. Everybody stop. Just sit down. I can't deal with it. Everybody just sit down. Can you be that? And that's kind of a KillJoy fun person. You can be that type of person. But see, you're forgetting that that's not what the law is for. It's not to make someone righteous in God's sight. But what is it for? Well, we continue on in verse 20, and it says this. It says, rather, through the law, we become conscious of our sin. Let me ask you this. Does anybody in here just go hang out in a permanent chair at the doctor's office, hoping one day you might get sick? You may do that? Just like, you got a regular chair at the ER, and you just kind of watch your TV there, and you're waiting, and oh, hey, I'm sick, I'm not going to be here. Do you just wait for that? No. You don't do that. That's dumb. Well, if anybody does that, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to call you dumb. But it is, okay? But here's the thing. The reason you go to the doctor is when you recognize some symptoms in your life that you know you're sick. Well, I'm getting kind of hot. Got a fever. Okay, just threw up 3 times. That's a bad deal. Can't seem to stop. Okay, that's really bad. Okay, I need to go to the doctor because of all these factors that just happened in my life. They tell me I need to go to the doctor. I see these symptoms, right? That's what you do. Well, see, what the law was is the law was like something that highlighted the symptoms of people. Because the truth is, without the law, you and I would never know that we've done anything wrong without God's law. See, also in Romans, it tells us that the law came so that sin, I love it, so that trespass or sin might increase. And I'm going, wait a minute. So you brought the law so people would sin more? And what he was saying is no, I brought the law so it would highlight the areas that are going wrong so that you and I would have any clue whatsoever that something wasn't right and that we needed a Savior. And that's why the law was sent. That's why it was there. It says, I don't think I've ever met anyone in church who doesn't know, or anyone outside of church for that matter, that hasn't said, okay, I've done something wrong. I mean, we've crossed that hurdle. You used to have that. Sometimes people would say, well, I've never done anything wrong. Well, I mean, it's kind of accepted in our culture. We're all jacked up. We all got some issues. Everybody's got issues. And pretty much everybody will say that something's wrong. It's always what do we do to deal with it? And a way that people try to deal with that now, here's what you see, is a very prevalent thing in our society is let's just get rid of rules. Right? Because see, if I feel bad because they said it was wrong, let's get rid of the wrong, and then I don't have to feel bad. And that was all that was wrong with me to begin with, because it's just, our feelings are hurt. That's the worst thing that could ever happen to anybody. That's ridiculous, man. That doesn't fix the real problem any more than you just masking the symptoms of cancer makes you cancer-free. It's still damaging you. It's still tearing you up on the inside. And if you don't understand what's wrong, then you can't put that together and know something needs to be done before I'm destroyed. If you think it's just about a rule thing, look at the Garden of Eden. Let's just look at that, okay? We accept the Garden of Eden. That's where Jesus, God created the world, and He created Adam and Eve, and He put them in this paradise of a garden, and their entire job, all they had to do, just think about this. They had one job. Just run around naked and name animals. That's all you had to do, with no shame. In this magical garden with no sand spurs for your feet, and everything felt like awesome. It was just this awesome place. You got one job. Just run around and call a giraffe, or whatever you want to call it. God didn't really put any stipulations on it. He said, I would like everything to be in alphabetical order, blah, 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 blah. No, just name it. You just make it up. If your sound goes, that's a blah, great, okay, super. You cannot fail at this. And He gave them one rule. Just don't eat at that tree over there. You can eat all this stuff. Look at those juicy purple whatevers I've made over there. You're going to name them. I'm not worried about it. Just those are awesome. But just don't eat at that. One law. And they broke it. One law, one thing, and then messed it up for everybody, right? That's how it went, okay? But the truth is, if anyone was in that same situation, we would have had the same problem, because, see, the amount of laws don't have anything to do with it. The problem is that we have a condition inside our heart called a sin nature that is rebellious, and we want to go against God in what He does, and we want to do things our way. And if you don't believe me, if you've ever had this pop into your head, I used this before. I know I shouldn't do this, but, okay, that's your sin nature. Boom. I know I shouldn't, but I want to anyway. There you go. And that is a condition of the heart, and that comes out in myriads of ways. Usually when we don't trust the Lord, when we don't trust Jesus, if it's just an amazing thing that we will fight against, won't we? You're wrong. No, I'm not. I want to do it anyway. Okay, yeah, I believe doing that's wrong, but I'm not wrong because I have a special situation. That's what it is. You don't understand my situation. We use that a lot now. That's great. It's totally bogus, but that's what we use anyway. But see, here's the good news. So the law can't save you, right? It's not made to save you. It's just made so that you can understand and I can understand there's something wrong with us. But here's the good news. In verse 21 it says, but now apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been made known. And what it's talking about there is Jesus. It says, to which the law and the prophets testify. Jesus is the righteousness of God. The law and the prophets, all that stuff, it's all working together. Jesus is not abolishing it because all that's been pointing to him. It's been setting up his coming. You're doing something wrong. You can't fix it. You can't keep the law. It's not working, Pharisees. You're failing, and you're just trying to hide it. But there is a solution. It says right here, it says, but this righteousness is given through faith in Jesus to all who believe. Jesus is the righteousness of God. And that's what the law and the writings of the Old Testament were all talking about. See, there's no other way ever for you to be right with God. There's no way to please God. See, you know what religion? Religion is man's answer to try to please God. That's usually, and you look across religion all the time. You look at all the major religions you see. There's a set of rules that you have to follow to be able to please God. And that's why I laugh when people lump Christianity in the middle of that, because God's not saying that. He said, I know you broke the rules and you can't keep all the rules, so I sent my son to die for you, and if you'll accept him, I'll put my grace, I'll cover you. It talks about the covering of salvation, the covering of righteousness. That's actually in Isaiah, it's a picture of someone taking, like, I've got this awesome righteous, you've got a robe on, or you've got a clothes on, and they just stink, they're horrible, and somebody's got like an Armani robe over here, and they just take it off and they put it on you, and then all of a sudden nobody sees your messed up stuff anymore. That's what Jesus did. He took off his great robe of righteousness and puts it on each one of us when we decide to believe and give our lives to him. And so when God looks at you now, if you're following Jesus, he doesn't look and say, boy, that was a nasty habit you had the other day. Oh, I can't believe you thought that? Oh, goodness, don't let that one get out. You better hope you don't get Tourette's later on. Oh, goodness, and throw that out there. No. You better hope you don't take any high drugs while that's on your mind. No, do that. Or everybody will just blackball you and send you out in the parking lot. That's what's going to happen. What he's saying is he sees the righteousness of Jesus when you start to follow Jesus. And then all your messed up stuff and my messed up and all up stuff and all our junk, that's all put to the side. He said, because Jesus has taken care of that. You can't be good enough and you can't keep enough rules. Only through Jesus can you be saved. Because see, here's what it is. The law is about diagnosis, but Jesus is about solution. The law is about diagnosis, and Jesus is about solution. So if we act, and see, here's the thing. We think the law is about punishment, but it's not. The punishment's already been paid. That was Jesus. When he died on a cross for us, that's done. And so what? And see, here's the problem. If we get to thinking in this church, and then we teach others that if you can be good enough, and if you can obey all the social norms in church, and you can obey all the rules and all the things and all the little idiosyncrasies we have, and you can be good enough, we will turn out a church full of people that are dressed in very nice clothes, modestly quiet, and trying to keep a bunch of rules, but they are as lost as a goose. And what will happen when that breaks down, after they have run down that road and tried to be the good person that I'm supposed to be, if I just keep trying harder and I just show up to all the meetings and I go to all the events and I just do that and I just don't, I'm just not going to cuss, not going to call anybody out on anything, even when they need to be called out. I'm not going to call them out on it. I'm going to hold up. When that breaks down, and it will, they're going to leave with a lot of bitterness and anger. And they should, because we've told them the wrong thing. It's not how well they can act. It's about the act that Jesus has done. It's not about what I can do. It's about what he's already done. And that's how we are right with the Lord. So you say, what in the world? So then what do rules have to do with anything? I love the way David puts it in Psalm 16. In Psalm 16, he talks about, I love this. He talks about this great point. He says, the boundary lines, I love this. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I will have a delightful inheritance. I go bowling with my son some, and he loves it. And it's a good thing for us because we're pretty close together at what we do, and I have to work to beat him because he gets to use this thing called bumpers. You see bumpers? You see things at the bowling alley, they turn on some switch, poof, and then he can't go in the gutter at all. Well, I'm not that way. I don't get the bumpers to use. And so I pull it out maybe at the end with a just really sweat-filled, knock down a few pins or something. And sometimes he beats me and he's like 8. So, I'm sitting here, and the thing about it is the laws are like the bumpers at the bowling alley. They're not to be great insults. They're meant to, when you hit that, you kind of know on the other side of that law is something bad. And what David was saying is that the boundary lines are set for me in pleasant places. Because I know on this side of the law, things are well, because God's laws are smart. They're based on how He made the world to work, and made you and me to work. And so when we follow that, things happen well and better for us. So that's what they are on the other side, because the bumpers keep you from going in the gutter, and that's kind of what the laws do. They're spiraling down into the gutter. It's not that God can't bring you back from that, but it keeps you from that damaging situation. And that's what a God who loves us tries to do with the things He said. But here's the thing that I think is when we always talk about God, and this attitude that God is a killjoy. My wife and I were talking this morning, and she reminded me of this verse, and I changed how I did this just for this. But later on in Psalm 16, it says this: "You make known to me the path of life." In other words, you tell me where everything's going to work well, and over here it's not. "And in your presence is the fullness of joy." You see, and this is what I want you to remember. God is not a killjoy. God is full joy. See, all the experiences and things that you and I think we want to do. I want to race I want to motorcycle race somebody, or I want to do some extreme sport. All these whatever. And those are all fine, But when you cross the line, there's things that God's told you to do, and you don't want to do that. You think that there's something on the other side of that path, other side of that bumper that's awesome. And I will leave that experience with this feeling and this stuff inside of me and these memories, and they're just awesome and amazing. And they're just going to be huge, and they will bring me joy. Because see, I'm going to tell you, the things you want to do are not what you necessarily want to do. What you want is what you take back from the things that you do. And what God is saying is, look, I will give you fullness of joy. I sat down with my cousin back in the fall. Her son was riding a four-wheeler down the road, and he was looking off. In South Alabama, the roads are small and turny and stuff, and we have a lot of log trucks that drive on that road. And he came up over the crest of the hill, and a log truck was coming the other way, and he never saw it. And this 15-year-old dude who was way bigger than me, awesome baseball player, awesome football player, died and just devastated that community. And my cousin, I went back to represent the family, and that's the drive you make and get back for that funeral. And you go and you sit down with my cousin, and they're distraught, and her husband, his father, distraught. I'm sitting down with the sister, and she's going, he's not going to have his first girlfriend. He's never going to know what prom's like. He's not going to know what it means to graduate. He's not going to college. He's never going to get married. And start going through all these things, all these experiences that she wanted. I want him to have that because I want him to know how it feels. And I said, look, Amy, that's not the point. If he followed Jesus, the minute he was in God's presence, he knew everything that could have ever been felt that was profitable and amazing. And he knew it immediately without all the pitfalls that we would have to try to experience with, or needle in a haystack it. Because God is the fullness of joy. And this is why it's important for us to bash, and not bash, for us to get rid of this type of mentality. Because people think that God is here to destroy them, but God has come to give them the best life possible. Go read John 10:10. In the Message, it says a life that is far greater than you could possibly ever dream or imagine. The fullness of joy, because God's not KillJoy. God is full joy. Now, Christian, if you've been living in this, and this is no shame, right? We talk this way. If you've been living with that mentality, that if I don't keep enough rules, God's mad with me, or God's mad with me all the time, or I messed up, oh no, what'd I do? And it is robbing you of joy. I'm going to tell you that is not the way God means for you to live. God knows every bad thought you've ever had. He'll know everything that you're going to have. He knows everything that you're going to do that's not wise or not great or not awesome. He knows it all. And He loves you, and He knew it when He went down on a cross. And He died on a cross for you. There is nothing that you can do that will increase God's love for you, just like there's nothing you can do that will lessen it. You can just make a choice about whether you're going to follow Him into eternity and experience the fullness of joy, or you're going to walk away from Him and have a needle in a haystack life and then a real crappy eternity. That's what it is. Here's the thing. You need to stop. You need to let the pressure off yourself. Here's what you do. When you run up against a rule and you've broken it, okay, here's what you do. Recognize it. I did it. Okay, great. I'm not perfect. Okay, God, you said that. Confess it to the Lord. God says to confess our sins to Him. He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness, right? In 1 John. But here's the thing. That's not just so He knows it. He didn't figure it out. He already knew it. You confess it so you can mark that time, and you know it. And you've recognized this. Confess it to Him. Repent of it. Walk away. Say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to make my decisions the way I made before. Okay, God says to do it this way. I'm going to make my decisions based off of this information rather than what I would rather do. And then let it go. It's over. It's over as far as He's concerned. And you're back on the road of life. You're in the lanes. If you haven't followed Christ, so that's somebody who's in the church. If you don't follow Jesus, and that has been the big stick for you, that's the sticking point. I can't keep up with the rules. I can't follow all the stuff. Well, then you need to just let off of that. It's so many times what God makes simple, we make hard. We're messed up. Everybody knows it. God knew it. He made a way for it. He sent His Son who died, who lived a perfect life and never did anything that God wouldn't have done. That's what it means to not sin, to never do anything or think anything that God wouldn't have done in His place, completely in line with God's plan. And even though He didn't deserve it, He died and took the punishment for all of us. That's a great way to celebrate. And all He asks for us is that we give our lives back to Him and we follow Him and we trust Him as He leads us through this life and helps us to navigate it in a way that we can have the fullest life possible and that we continue on into eternity. And while we do that, we tell other people about that and we help them do the same thing. There's nothing bad about that. That's a no-brainer. But that is the gospel.
Thanks for being a part of Bay West today. Bay West Church meets at 100 Emerson Road in Palm Bay at 11 a.m. on Sundays. Please feel free to check us out at baywestchurch.org, or you can follow us on Facebook at Bay West Church.